it seems the most likely scenario is that Fox reached out to Disney.
The Wall Street Journal reporting that Walt Disney recently held talks to buy some of 21st Century Fox's assets.
They are buying a lot of great content here if this deal were to go through. So I think at the end of the day, that's what actually matters. Another day investors are happy.
Now, according to that report, it was only Fox selling off certain elements. Fox still wants to be its own media empire, but they just want to lean down and focus on news and sports.
So it looks like Wolverine might get to fight alongside the Avengers Hobgoblin on the silver screen.
Superheroes in New York? Give me a break.
Oh boy. So, there's a whole lot of stuff going on. Let me tell you my opinions, but before we do that, we should probably actually talk about the specifics of this deal. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I am talking about the talks, may or may not happen, that Disney, the big corporation that owns Star Wars, Marvel, is trying to buy Fox, and a lot of things going on with Fox. I'm not a huge fan of this deal, and I'm gonna get into that before you yell at me for not liking it. I know AURAM'S Forum is pretty negative sometimes, but you know what? That's fine. I'm a negative person, I guess. So yeah, something I want to clear up before I start talking about my opinions of, are the X-Men gonna join the MCU, or the Fantastic Four gonna join the MCU, all this stuff. I want to talk about the actual deal first, and what is going on with it, because there's a huge misunderstanding of the deal that makes a third pillar other than the X-Men and the Fantastic Four come up with, and people are like, wouldn't it be funny if Batman joined the MCU because Fox owns Gotham, so they have Batman's TV rights or whatever? No. Well, yes, that's correct. Fox does own Gotham, so... But the misunderstanding lies in that Disney does not want to buy Fox Broadcasting Company, which is the network cable, the cable network that shows Gotham and other shows like it. What they want is 20th and 21st Century Fox, which is to say the film rights, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, all of that stuff. The only TV stuff they're looking at, as far as I know, is National Geographic and FX, the FX channels, which have nothing to do with Gotham, unless little baby Bruce Wayne wanted to go on, like, some expedition and to the National Geographic channel. I don't know why they would do that. That'd be a weird crossover. What's a National never mind. You know what? That bit's over. We're moving on. This chair is more rickety than normal.
The fuck?
So yeah, I just wanted to make that distinction that Disney is looking at certain assets of the Fox mega corporation. They're not looking to buy all of it. And I'm not super clear on the reasons why. It's still kind of up in arms, because this was just rumors for a while and is only now kind of being cemented as an actual thing. But like, nobody's really sure who approached who, like if Disney just wants the X-Men rights back, or if Fox is just trying to get some money for a new project that they're starting. I've heard a lot of things. Some of them might be true, but that's really not part of the video. That's not the point here. The point that I want to get into is why I think specifically the X-Men joining the Marvel Cinematic Universe would be a disaster. So, bold claim, I know, but let me explain. So something that I find fascinating from my, I guess, childhood is, before I read comic books, before I was too familiar with the Marvel Cinematic Universe because it didn't exist, I genuinely believed that the X-Men were not a Marvel property. I didn't think of it in that way, that that there were rights to certain characters, because I was small and didn't understand that that's how things worked. But in my head, I was just like, oh yeah, you've got the Avengers, and Spider-Man is there sometimes, and then the X-Men are off in their, I guess, their own universe. I can't really describe what I thought about it. It was just, I just remember when I heard that the Avengers and the X-Men did things in the comic books together and that they were all under the Marvel banner, that was just strange to me. I remember being very confused by that. And that kind of beautifully illustrates my point of the X-Men. They are their own universe. They do interact and cross over with other Avengers characters or just other Marvel characters in the comics, but they really don't have to. They're so expansive and so in their own world that there's not a lot of good that comes out of, well, there is good that comes out of it, but there's not a lot, it's not necessary to have them interact. And we clearly have evidence of that with the 10-odd movies in the X-Men universe over at Fox, where most of them, maybe not most of them, I'd say like half of them are pretty solid. Maybe a little more than that. Who knows? I'm not going to say, this isn't an X-Men movie review. That set's over there. We're not talking about that today. It's like how the Guardians movie, when the Guardians movie came out, you were like, wow, this is so different from what we've seen before in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But it's not, but they were so off into their own world that they're literally in space. They're literally cosmic people. And the only connective tissue that we've had so far is the Infinity Stones. And of course, in Infinity War, they're all going to meet. But even in the trailer, you could see that Thor is the one meeting them, presumably for the first time, and connecting those two worlds together. But it's not like Captain America just stumbling upon Peter Quill one day. That's not going to happen because tonally, thematically, that doesn't make any sense. They are characters from two different worlds. So if the X-Men showed up, who are basically the same caliber as the Avengers, and they were just there one day, that wouldn't really make any sense. And of course, this is where things come into play, like, oh, maybe they'll time travel back in time, or they're in the future, or they're in the past or something, the mutants I'm talking about. Maybe there's some weird dimensional rift at the end of Infinity War where a portal opens up, and John Wolverine walks out and is like, hey, bub, it's me, your father. And Captain America's like, what? My father? My father's been dead for centuries. And then the Reverse Flash comes out and he's like, I heard something about centuries. And then Batman comes up and he's like, oh, Disney bought me too. And then he puts his Mickey Mouse hat on and he flies off with a grappling hook into Marvel Gotham. And then everybody's mind blows. And then Kevin Feige comes out on screen, puts his hat on and says, welp, that's it, folks. And then he winks and the entire theater explodes. Like the real movie theater just blows up. And that's how the world ends. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. Yeah, so you could come up with a million crackpot theories as to how to get the X-Men into the Marvel Cinematic Universe and it making sense. And I don't doubt Marvel's prowess in being able to do that. The Guardians of the Galaxy, you could also use as a great example of bringing something so different from the tone that they've set up and putting it in there. And of course, I've already said that because they were in space, because they were so separated, and they took their time to bring them together, then that works. But I also would have a hard time putting faith into Marvel to not immediately jump the gun and put all the characters, all the X-Men, or at least the main guys, into an MCU movie right away because of Batman v Superman. DC was so eager, once they were like, alright, we're gonna start our movie universe, they were so eager to get their universe going that literally the first introduction of Batman was in Man of Steel 2, basically. That's what that movie is. What I'm trying to say is, I think it would be too messy for them to put the X-Men in the MCU as it is now. And that's not me suggesting that they reboot the MCU to put the X-Men in there. That's not me suggesting that they should take 10 years to slowly introduce the X-Men into the MCU. What this is me suggesting is they literally don't change anything. If this deal goes through, Disney just moves some stuff over. They move Gifted, they move Legion, they move whatever other mutant X-Men properties over, all the films, and they just continue doing that. They share the rights of the current stuff with Fox for a while, like they did with Hulk and Universal, I believe, with the distribution rights. And then they can start making their own things, but just don't, leave the MCU alone. Maybe in 20 years, if they reboot, they can do that, or if they want to make, a small cameo, if Deadpool wants to show up in something. Cameos could be fun. They could start doing that stuff, because that wouldn't be weird. That wouldn't cross a line that, say, Batman showing up would cross. Because there's precedent for that in the comics, and it makes sense. The tones are not totally different. Like, if Batman showed up in a Thor movie, you'd be very confused, but if Thor referenced the Phoenix or something, you'd be like, oh shit, oh fuck. Your little comic book dick would tingle for a little bit. So yeah, cameos could be interesting, or just references, because they have the rights to do that stuff now, or they will, assuming this deal goes through. But just full-blown, like, Wolverine showing up, them doing an Avengers versus X-Men movie, we don't need that. The MCU doesn't need that. It's strong enough on its own. It's doing its own thing, and has been doing its own thing for almost a decade now. So, just, at the very least, wait a couple phases. Wait like 6 years before you start integrating the X-Men, the mutants, into the MCU. And you might be thinking to yourself, you're not talking about the Fantastic Four. Why aren't you mentioning the Fantastic Four? That's because my opinion on the Fantastic Four being in the MCU is literally the opposite of my opinion on the X-Men. I would love to see the Fantastic Four in the MCU with one large caveat, and that caveat is that they change them drastically. Basically, I want the Ultimate Universe version of the Fantastic Four in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's what I want. And the reason for that is because I don't think their adult selves have a place in the MCU, because you have, in like the adult field, you have all of the Avengers except for Spider-Man and I guess the Runaways. Imagine a Spider-Man movie where Peter is in like his junior year of high school, and for the senior year or whatever year, or maybe even college, he gets offered to go to this fancy science state university with a grant from someone, and just because he's Peter Parker, just because he's smart Peter Parker, not because he's Spider-Man. This isn't like a Stark internship or anything like that. He's just a smart boy who does good at his schooling, and he goes off to college or senior year or whatever into this like boarding school almost type environment. And guess who's there? But Reed Richards, Sue Storm, not Ben Grimm, and probably not Johnny Storm either. They'll be there. They're just not at that school because they're not as smart. So the Fantastic Four being in like a high school type college environment with Peter would allow them to have a smoother introduction, I feel, into the MCU, a more self-contained introduction, and it would also expand on Peter's life more. Maybe they would have their powers. They probably would have their powers. Maybe they would do a thing where they get their powers halfway through the movie. I don't know. I'm no writer. That would kind of be difficult to work out. But maybe Peter gets taken into the school so that they can work on, maybe it's like a secret S.H.I.E.L.D. school, even though I know S.H.I.E.L.D. is like super in flux right now. But maybe they go off to there's this program in the school where they need Reed, Sue, Peter, maybe Ben or Johnny is the pilot, or Ben's the pilot, and then Johnny just like tags along because he's a hot-headed freak. Or maybe he's smart too. Maybe they're all smart. Who knows? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. But they all team up and they go to space, and Peter already has powers, so maybe he doesn't get affected. Or maybe Peter does get affected, and then they can do the storyline where he gets actual webbing. Don't do that. Don't turn Tom Holland into a big, gross spider monster. We don't need to see that. So that's basically all I have to say about the Fantastic Four. I know it's not much, but I don't think I feel like I don't need to defend myself or talk too much about it, because the popular opinion is that the Fantastic Four should be included. Of course, there's the worry that they'll get it wrong again, but I kind of have faith in Marvel Studios that they can actually get things right. But of course, there are more concerns. The more popular concerns with this deal involves if there's ever going to be a Logan sequel and the Deadpool sequel, which is happening. What's going to go down with that? Are they still going to be rated R? Are they going to be, in the case of the Deadpool sequel, is that going to be totally changed in certain ways if this deal goes through? Because Disney is a very family-friendly company, and they want to make money, so R-rated movies do make money, but they don't make as much money as PG-13 movies, so Are we going to see a PG-13 Logan 2, or is Deadpool 2 going to be changed to PG-13? I'm, of course, of the belief that they went too far in Deadpool with the R rating. They pushed it a bit too much. Not because of the gore or the blood or whatever. That's fine. And I'm sure that was one of the reasons they needed the R rating. It was the language specifically that felt asinine most of the time. Like Deadpool putting fucking between Chimmy and Chonga. What's the joke there? That he said the fuck word? It's not funny. I mean, it could be funny to you, and if it is, that's great. It's just not, didn't give me a laugh. It just felt kind of over the top. But that's not to say I wouldn't be disappointed by a Deadpool 2 being PG-13. I think they could still, for the future, if like Logan 2, which I don't even think is in production right now, or even pre-production, who knows? I haven't looked into Logan 2 that much because Logan was good enough to be its own self-contained thing, so I kind of don't want there to be a sequel. But if Logan 2 comes out and they start working on it and they know ahead of time that it's going to be PG-13, that'd probably be fine because they could write around that. But Deadpool 2 is already in production heavily and going off the assumption that they do have the R rating. And there will probably be some clause in the deal, like Deadpool 2 gets released as normally, fuck you Disney, we get to do what we want because we already started this. That would probably happen. But of course there is always the chance that Disney's like, no, you must be family friendly, or else we'll demonetize your movie. Somehow, we'll steal all the money and stuff it in our pockets. They have Monopoly on the game Monopoly. So yeah, those are my concerns with this Fox-Disney deal. I honestly don't want to see it go through. And that's not me being a grouch or like a coward, like, don't go into the comments, of course everyone's gonna do this now, but don't go into the comments and be like, what, little pussy bitch, you don't want to take the dive? You don't want to see what Disney could do with all the Fox properties? I'd love to see it. I'm just worried. I'm concerned that they're either going to do too much, they're going to put too much on their plate, like Batman v Superman, they're going to just ham-fist everything in there as quickly as possible, like Batman v Superman. I'm sorry that I'm punching Batman v Superman so much. It's a good example of what could go wrong. I just want them to be careful if this deal goes through, and I think they're doing so great, Marvel Studios and Disney are doing so great with the things that they're currently doing, that throwing a huge monkey wrench into it that is the mutants, the Fantastic Four, basically every other Marvel character being thrown into the ring, it would just cause a big mess. Like, Spider-Man was one character, and sure they have the rights to other characters, kind of. The Sony deal was a little bit weird, and it's still a little bit weird, but I think that was for the better, that it wasn't just an outright, like, they didn't buy Sony, they just made a deal with them so that Spider-Man can appear in MCU movies, and Sony still gets some of the profit. Or all the profit, I'm not sure. I don't know how that works. It's very murky. Business stuff. The point is that we just have Spider-Man and the characters that Marvel Studios needs at the time for Spider-Man. It's not like Spider-Man and Spider-Woman and Spider-Girl and Mary Jane and all these characters just showed up at the airport fight during Civil War. That didn't happen. In Civil War, we just had Spider-Man and Aunt May. They didn't throw like a huge big glob of characters in there at once, which I feel like they would be too tempted not to do, or too tempted to do with this Fox-Disney deal, if it goes through. So, anyway, that's what I have to say. I'm not plugging my Patreon anymore. I guess by saying that I'm not plugging my Patreon is me plugging my Patreon, but henceforth I will no longer plug my Patreon, just because I don't feel like it's not really worth it. It's there. If you want to use it, it'll still be in the description if you want to just give me money for some reason, but I don't feel like I'm giving you anything other than videos in return that much, and the videos aren't even coming out that much. But what I will leave you with is a teaser for my next series/show thing. I don't want to say too much about it. I'm keeping pretty hush-hush on it. If you follow me on Twitter, there might be some more teases, but here's a very small tease of what is to come on this channel. So here you go.